It is Locked On NBA Game Night. I'm Wes Goldberg here with Swipa. Coming up, the Celtics, they're ruining the NBA, Swipa. Just kidding. Not really. Plus, what's wrong with the Timberwolves? What's going right for the Clippers? All of that and much more on a Sunday night edition of Locked On NBA Game Night. Let's jump in.
When that final buzzer rings, you know it's time for Locked On NBA Game Night. All the post-game reactions to every game across the league, every single night, with insights only the hosts at Locked On can provide. It's the true NBA fans' one stop for all the action. Every game, every night. It's Locked On NBA Game Night. Tipping off now.
Welcome to Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night in 30 minutes on the Locked On NBA podcast feed. Wes Goldberg here with Swipa. However, you might be tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks for making Locked On NBA your first listen every day. Today's episode is sponsored by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Jam-packed show for you on this Sunday night. We had an overtime thriller in Miami. We have some good news for the Indiana Pacers, and we have to have a conversation about these LA Clippers. But we're going to start today in Boston, where the Celtics beat the Timberwolves 107-105. The Timberwolves came back from down 19 in this game, got it to within 2, and had the ball with 7 seconds to go. But a missed Naz Reid three-pointer secured the win for Boston. Here's John Corrales from Locked On Celtics with more.
Celtics got 5 straight three-pointers from Jaylen Brown to start the game, but he was their only offense in the first quarter. They slowed down, but then Jason Tatum picked things up in the second and the third. Then it was Derek White time in the fourth. I thought Derek White had an incredible game. His recognition, his processing is incredible. I am constantly in awe of it. He made a great play down the stretch, minute and a half to go. Jason Tatum comes up with a rebound, throws a lead pass out to him that was way too far ahead of him, but he still was able to track it down, get under control, and started the ball movement that got to Jaylen Brown's what became a game-winning three to make it 107. The Minnesota Timberwolves had a chance at 105 to win the game, but a great defensive stop from the Celtics. Three-point shooting was the big difference. The Celtics once again get up 56 three-pointers. They hit 21 of them. The Timberwolves 15 of 41. Their big comeback in the fourth quarter was fueled by 6 of 10 three-point shooting, where the Celtics only hit 3 in the fourth quarter. So if they're falling for the Celtics, they're unstoppable. But when they stop falling and the other team's hitting them, obviously a chance for a comeback. Always a great game between these two teams. I think obviously the Jays, but Derek White I think was a really big story in this as well.
So I was counting how many times John in his 1 minute short there said three-pointers or referred to three-pointers, and I got to like 7 or 8 different times in about 60 seconds. Here's why I think the Celtics are ruining the NBA, and it's a strong take, and I'm coming out here hot. I don't really enjoy watching Celtics games, Swipa, because like John said, it just sort of comes down to who's making more of the threes. And look, credit to the Boston Celtics. They have so many great three-point shooters. They're an awesome defensive team when they're plugged in. They figured out this formula that works for them, and it's working for them. Obviously it's working for them. They're the reigning champions, they're the favorites right now. I just can't help but watch a game that should be so much more exciting. Jason Tatum versus Anthony Edwards, right? Like these two star-studded teams going at it, and it was a close game at the end, and I just couldn't help but think it just sort of comes down to the math in the end, and it just sort of feels like I'm watching a Harvard professor draw up a formula or something, and like Goodwill Hunting or something. I'm like, I don't want to do this. I want to watch. It doesn't really matter when you're playing the Celtics what you do within the three-point line, below the arc. And what Anthony Edwards can do in that realm, what Rudy Gobert's impact is in that area, is so important in every other game except when you're playing the Celtics, that I just sort of find myself yawning while I'm watching them. I'm like, this is the reigning champions. This is a star-studded matchup, and I just sort of was just yawning through it despite it being a close game. Am I crazy?
This is not the first time that I have heard that, and I think from a fan overall enjoyment experience, I think that a lot of Celtics fans, they feel very differently. I think that a lot of modern basketball fans feel very differently, because for them, finding the most optimal shot within the flow of your offense is the best brand of basketball, which is layups, which is three-pointers. And this has been not just really since the Warriors, but since Mike D'Antoni's Houston Rockets with James Harden, Gerald Green and the rest of the roster, Trevor Ariza. They started this revolution that we're in where you're trying to get up 40 plus 3-pointers a game. So I definitely understand that there is some hesitancy to accept this. But one of the things that while you were talking, I went and actually kind of who's leading the NBA in 3-point attempts to start the year off. The Celtics are 1, the Bulls are 2, the Hornets are 3, Magic are 4. Then you got the Spurs, but then you get Cleveland, the Warriors, Detroit, and Minnesota, and then Phoenix. What I actually am paying attention to here is that there's actually just a kind of split in play style as a whole. The team that shoots the least amount of 3-pointers in the NBA are the Denver Nuggets. They've only shot 482 threes to start the year off. The Celtics have shot 859, almost twice as many. So I think I can understand that some people feel like the Celtics are ruining the NBA. The problem is that there are so many other kinds of play style that are functioning in the league right now. Like you look at the New York Knicks with the 2-man game they have. You cover the Miami Heat. They run this kind of really slow pace, grind you down, smart basketball style of basketball that get you in a half-court set. We're going to basically run a lot of split actions and in cuts and all this stuff. Like then you play in the Nuggets. They got this inverted offense that starts with Joker. You got the Warriors, heavy pass, a lot of motion. Everybody's moving all around the court. So I think if the NBA, by and large, I could into that style more, then I think it would be ruining, quote unquote, the product. But I will say you have to shoot more threes to keep up with the math. But I think too, like it's just more. It's easier to produce offense and to get yourself in and out of a rut if you are attempting 3-pointers, just because of the way the math is going to work. Getting 1 of 3, 33% from 3, and the Celtics have been able to master that. And today, look, Jaylen Brown starts the game off, bang, 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 5 3-pointers out of the gate, and he really set the tone. And I want to give the Celtics credit. That last possession, Anthony Edwards is one of the best drivers in the league. Jaylen Brown stonewalled him, didn't let him get to a spot, and then Jason Tatum made an elite rotation down to the corner to make sure Jaden McDaniel could not get that 3-pointer off. And then Naz Reid gets the ball, and he basically has to throw the ball up into the Raptors just to get a shot off with basically no time left. So as much as the Celtics shoot threes, they also do a lot of dirty work things really well, what makes them so dominant.
Yeah, I'm not dismissing the level of dominance or how effective it is or that they're doing the right thing. And I get it. Like, I understand like what it is, but like just simple question, Swipa. Did you enjoy watching that game?
I mean, I think I did personally, but again, I just enjoy watching like elite level talent on the court. Rudy Gobert was dominant tonight. Like
he was great.
Yeah, he was amazing. He switched on to Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to start the game and to end the game. And he won those possessions. I love seeing that. I love seeing Anthony Edwards have to respond. Julius Randle, he has a very specific kind of play style and a way he likes to play basketball. And he played well today in spots. He got them back into the game. So I think like I enjoyed watching the process of the Timberwolves having to fight back to get back into the game. And I just kind of watching them overcome adversity in the game.
Had they not come back, and like again, the reason they came back is like what John said. Like the Boston Celtics kept shooting these, and they started missing them. Minnesota started making them. I know I'm just gonna get a bunch of Celtics hate, but you know what? Bring it on. Who cares? I do. Let's talk about the Timberwolves a little bit more, though. They've lost 5 of their last 7 games. Getting a win tonight, it felt like that could have just been huge for them.
Yeah.
I look at the Timberwolves, and everybody's asking what's wrong, and it comes down to something simple for me. They're not special at anything anymore. They're 15th in defensive rating, 9th in offensive rating before this game started. It's probably going to be around the same spot. Last year, their defense kept them in their defense won them these games. They were with a bullet, the best defense in the league last season, and they're just not special anymore. And I don't know that that's just because of the Karl-Anthony Towns trade. I think it's generally hard to just be that dominant defensively year over year. Like defensive rating numbers don't typically stick that way, but certainly that's part of it, right? And the Julius Randle fit has been a little clunky, but to me, they've got to either figure out how to get elite defensively or elite offensively, because right now they're just sort of not special in any category.
Well, I think that's why they're trying to get their 3-point attempts up. They're currently, I think, 9th in the league, and so they're trying to compensate for the things they don't do well. But yeah, their defense has fallen off of the cliff, and I think that's going to be the thing that actually it haunts them as they go, especially in the Western Conference. I mean, you got to have something that you're doing that nobody else can replicate, or that it becomes your engine. And Rudy Gobert is elite around the rim, but they're just the commitment on the rotation and just the synergy defensively. It's just not been there, and some of that's just new communication with Dante DiVincenzo and Julius Randle for sure.
Yeah, I think they'll have an ability to turn it up, right? Like they still have Anthony Edwards, they still got McDaniel, they still got Gobert. When Gobert and Naz Reid are in there together, when it's not Randall, that they get to a higher ceiling defensively. And we saw it. We see it in spurts, but they just don't do it as often. And I understand it from the Celtics because their defensive rating has slipped, but they're the reigning champs. They're allowed to do that, right? You've earned that. You can do that. Right. Timberwolves guy made it to the Western Conference Finals. Awesome season. I got to see it for a couple more years, but we'll see.
Right.
The Heat got a big win in overtime. Tyrese Haliburton finally had a good game. Coming up next, we'll tell you what it means for the Eastern Conference here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode is brought to you by Skims. People ask me a lot, Wes, what kind of boxers do you wear? I don't know why they ask me this. People want to know. I'm happy to talk about it, though, because the truth is I put a lot of time and effort and thought into my underwear. Not a lie. A few years ago, I bought a bunch of different brands, took them all for a test drive, so to speak, and I settled on a brand, wore them for a few years. They were never perfect, but they were good enough. Well, I think I finally found the winner, and it's Skims. Skims came out with their cotton 5-inch boxer brief. Honestly, it puts every other brand I've ever tried to shame. They hit right at the thigh. They stay there. That's the key, people. They don't move around. They don't bag out. They don't give you that 5 p.m. wedgie. And if you're a boxer brief guy like me, this is the one. Shop Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. Let them know we sent you. All you have to do after you place your order, select podcast in the survey, select Locked On NBA in the drop-down menu that follows. And if you're looking for the perfect gift for the whole family, Skims just launched their biggest holiday shop ever. You could check that out. It's available at skims.com/LockedOnNBA. We'll be right back. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen every game, every night in 30 minutes. Best way to support the show is to subscribe on YouTube and on your favorite podcast app. Let's go to Miami, where the Heat beat the Mavericks in overtime, 123-118 for Miami. Too close for comfort, considering the rest advantage. It was their first game since Monday. They were at home. There was no Luka Doncic for Dallas. And despite all of that, they barely escaped with this one. But the Heat are back to 500. Jimmy Butler was the story, scoring 33 points, including the game-tying dunk to send the game to overtime. It's been an up-and-down season for the Heat. So I talk enough about them. I know what I think about the Miami Heat. If people want to know my thoughts, they can check out Locked On Heat. I'm curious what your thoughts are about the Miami Heat this season.
They're definitely an interesting team. You know, I think the Heat, their process has gone up and down, and this game, I think, was just they had some elite runs today. Got up double digits. They looked like they were going to be able to put the game away. They looked like they were on a mission. Bam on a bio. Jimmy Butler was having one of his best games of the year. They looked like, man, this is a team that I recognize that went to the NBA Finals and the Eastern Conference Finals. And then they just let go of the rope and they start turning the ball over and they start making bad decisions. And Najee Marshall is getting to the rim at will, you know, like they're just leaving wide open three-pointers. And so the game was closer than it could have been. But what I will say is that I love how the Heat were able to overcome some of their own adversity that they created for themselves by making the mistakes they made and then being able to turn it on in the fourth quarter. And especially when it came to money time, I think the Mavs, they got up 3 points, I want to say at one point. Four. They got up 4 points at one point. And I was like, man, I just saw the Mavs do this to Denver. Denver was up, I think they were up 7, and then the Mavs went on a 9-0 run or whatever. And so I watched this happen. And to see Jimmy Butler be able to respond to that, I thought, honestly, I did think Tyler Hero was about to shoot y'all out the game, just because he had the last 3 shots he took were abysmal and air balls, blocks, you name it. But that last out of bounds play that they ran for Jimmy Butler was elite. And that's the second time now in the last 2 weeks the Heat have run a backdoor out of an out of bounds play. And it was Jovic in Minnesota. And then you get Jimmy Butler. And it should have been I text you. I said, that should have been a foul. Like, to me, that was an and one, but they swallowed the whistle. By the way, shout out Derek Lively. His defense is literally like elite. He is an elite rim protector. He's an elite on cleaning up on the offensive glass. Every time Bam left him any space, he was putting the ball back in the hole. But Jimmy Butler being able to overcome that and to give you 33 points on 11 of 17 today and getting to the line 16 times, it was an elite performance for the Miami Heat. And I also want to give them credit. Dallas Mavericks, they've still been winning without Kyrie Irving. Matter of fact, they've looked the best they've looked this year, the last several games. So you didn't just beat like a team that was hampered. But I just think that the Miami Heat, man, they just did what they needed to do to come away with the victory. And it was a really, really, really quality win.
It's a good win. You hit the nail on the head, though, before when you said they created some adversity and then they fought their way through it. That is the Miami Heat story, basically for like the last couple of years since they made the NBA Finals in 2023. You can even argue when they made the NBA Finals in 2023, they created their own adversity by sinking into the play-in tournament, working their way out of that, and then making the finals. They climbed their way out of it. That's sort of the Miami Heat story. When Jimmy Butler plays like this, the Heat are a quality team. Like they look like the part of a contender in the Eastern Conference. They really do, because you have Jimmy as the head of the snake, Tyler Hero making shots. He wasn't good tonight, 1 for 10 from three-point range, but he's been literally the best three-point shooter in the league going into this game. You got Bam as the backbone of that defense. You've got Eric Spoelstra, pulling all the right levers and pushing all the right buttons at the exact right time. Like, that's what it takes. But when Jimmy isn't this, when he's something less than, everything else kind of falls apart. And I just wonder, okay, Jimmy, going into this week, was having a little bit of a rough season. He had missed 4 games with an ankle sprain. So that was certainly part of it. But he has 63, 64 points in back-to-back games. But those back-to-back games have been a week apart. And when Jimmy is rested, he can do this. And my thing with Jimmy is, okay, what does he look like Tuesday night against Milwaukee? What does he look Wednesday night, second night of a back-to-back in Charlotte? Can he keep this up, or is he going to go back to basically posting what had been Miami Heat 10-year lows going into this week? And that to me is the biggest question with them. So,
yeah, I think Jimmy's style, it doesn't lend itself sometimes at this age to be able to carry that kind of a load. And that's why I think Jimmy, he would serve better as an offensive number 2. But just the way the Heat are structured, they don't have the ability to not depend on him to be the number 1 option. I think he was averaging 17 points a game going into this game.
Not great.
I mean, that's like Jamal Murray. You know what I mean?
And
like
we talked about the 3-pointers. 0 3-pointers for Jimmy in this one.
I know.
Like when you look at guys like LeBron who age, and that's the way they age. It's they reduce the wear and tear, and Jimmy's like, I'm not reducing the wear and tear. I want more of the wear and tear. Like, he's taking Jimmy Butler.
Jimmy Butler is running the split back ISO dives still. In 2024. Yeah, no 3-pointers, but again, when he's able to get to the rim and finish, and he feels good, even that acrobatic finish he had when he got the contact in the air, was able to throw the ball over his shoulder and make the layup. Like, when Jimmy feels good, what I love about it is like the Heat, the rest of the team can feel it.
Yes.
And everybody kind of gets like confidence off of that.
You could tell when Jimmy Butler's engaged and when he hits this one shot. It's to me his signature shot where he gets it into the paint and he has that leaning push shot where he basically just puts his chest into his defender and kind of gets at an angle and just leans his way into the basket. When he's got that going and he's got that lift that it takes to hit that shot, that's when you know it's going to be a good Jimmy Butler night. And he'll usually hit one of those like at some point in the first half. And then you're like, oh, okay, it's going to be a good Jimmy night. And when he doesn't, you can usually tell also. Let's move on, though. The Pacers got back in the win column after losing 3 in a row by beating the Wizards 115-103. Tyrese Haliburton, 21 points, 9 assists. His best game in a couple of weeks here. Here's Locked On Pacers, Tony East with more.
Tony East here from Locked On Pacers on the floor here at Gainbridge Fieldhouse, where the Pacers got a win they needed it so bad after a 3-game skid on the road. Losers of 4 of 5. They beat the Wizards, not an impressive opponent victory, not even really an impressive margin, 12 points, mostly made up of a second-half flurry from the Pacers who were losing at halftime. But it's the way they got it done that mattered. They got better play from their stars in the same game. Pascal Siakam, their leading scorer, Tyrese Haliburton, igniting in the second half, his second-best three-point shooting game of the season by percentage. Pacers desperately want to see that, and they have 3 home games coming this week for him to try to build on that and get back in some sort of rhythm, given the poor season, especially compared to his expectations that he's had. The real expectations stand out tonight. Moses Brown, Pacers signed him less than a week ago. Miles Turner gets in foul trouble. They need Moses Brown to play. He scores their first 8 points against the Wizards. 15 points, his first 15-point game since he was with the Cavs in 2022. Role players stepped up. The stars were good. The Pacers were good enough to get to 7-10. We'll have more on Locked On Pacers.
Can they build on this, Swipa?
Well, I mean, you would hope, but unfortunately, this comes down to Hallie. Hallie is just, whether it's injury, whether it's just he's in his head, whether it's a lack of athleticism connected to the injury, he has not been the same player functionally. And when I say functionally, I mean just from his movement, to how he feels when he's on the court, to how he looks, the fluidity, because a player's body is directly going to impact the decisions they make with their body. And he just doesn't look like he has the same framework that he's building from. But if Tyrese Haliburton, if he feels good, he can shoot well, he can drive and create points off his drives, then that's when I think the Pacers that's when they're at their best. Because now we have like a legitimate, like great offensive engine, a bunch of offensive players, a bunch of shooters, and a bunch of athletes, and everybody's able to kind of slot into their role. And then Benedict Mathurin being back healthy again this year matters a lot for their team. I think Pascal Siakam's been very good, 22, 6, and 6 for him. And again, no Miles Turner today. And again, Andrew Nembhard is still kind of dealing with stuff he's dealing with. Like, they just have a lot of talent, but I think they have to have the person at the very top, very similar to the Miami Heat. They're not going to be the best version of themselves unless their best player is able to be contending for first team, second team All-NBA player in Tyrese Haliburton.
This might have been the first game all season where Haliburton and Pascal Siakam played well on the same night. I can't recall another, and that's huge, obviously, for what they want to do. It's the same thing, right? What makes you special? It's sort of the theme of the episode, I suppose, today. Tyrese Haliburton is the thing that makes Indiana special. But that's it. Everybody needs a get-right game, right? I know it was the Wizards. You could go poo-poo the win over the Wizards. I get it. But everybody needs sort of like a get-right game. And this could be it for Tyrese Haliburton. Here's next up on the Pacers schedule: New Orleans, Portland, and Detroit. This is a nice, solid week for Haliburton. If this is the get-right week, this is when it's going to happen for him. So it's something worth monitoring. Coming up next, the Clippers won their 5th game in a row. Are they actually good? We'll talk about that next and more here on Locked On NBA Game Night. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Get ready to tackle NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode is also brought to you by Game Time. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting your tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. With Game Time Picks, curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and any event that you want to attend. By using the all-in pricing feature, you'll see the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. With Seat Views, you get a panoramic view from the seat in the app before you buy the tickets. And Game Time is the place to get tickets for all of your events with their lowest price guarantee. If you find a cheaper ticket, Game Time's going to credit you 110% of the difference. And with Game Time ticket coverage, your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON, LOCKEDON, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. Thanks again for making Locked On NBA Game Night your first listen every game, every night, 30 minutes. We're going to wrap up the night with our final 3 games. We'll start with the Clippers, who beat the 76ers 125-99. No Joel Embiid for Philly, but the Clippers have won 5 in a row. Swipa. James Harden is doing the James Harden things, 20-plus points a game, 10-plus assists a game, including in this one. The Clippers are surprisingly better than I thought they were going to be. Where are you at on them?
If only someone would have listened and said Chris Dunn, James Harden, Zubac, Derrick Jones Jr. Their cores are actually a lot more solid than you realize. And then Norman Powell having his best season of his career. I don't think it's going to last all year. Are they going to be a top 6 seed all year? No, I'm willing to bet a a pretty pretty nickel that they're not going to do that. But they have the concept. They have defenders on the roster. They got a rim protecting big. That's a vertical spacer, and they have one of the best playmakers of all time who can create off the dribble still, hit those step back shots. He's not super efficient right now because he has to do everything for them offensively, but they have like a construct. And I think that the Clipper team, they're outperforming their overall like value right now, like in terms of their net rating. But I think that this is a team that can win a lot of games. They're going to push for 45 wins this year. And I think a lot of people I think if anything for me, Wes, this is more people coming around to the fact that James Harden is still one of the best floor raiders that we have in the league.
I've been there with Harden for a long time, so you're preaching to the choir here. This guy he's an innings eater, number one. He plays a ton of minutes. He plays a lot of games. Poke holes in his playoff resume, you obviously can, but we're talking about the regular season right now, and the guy just knows how to, like, he is a walking efficient offense right now. And look, it helps that the Clippers are sort of right on the fringe of top 10 in three-point shooting percentage, so when Harden's getting into the lane and kicking out, those shots are going in more often than they're not. But he's a world-class like floor reader. The guy's a great passer, and that's the part that I think gets lost in the James Harden conversation. We always think about the three-point shooting, the scoring in Houston, the step-back three-pointer, all that stuff. The guy, for a few years there, when he was an MVP candidate, it was like him and LeBron were the best passers in the NBA, before Jokic and all these guys kind of came up. So that's still very much a part of his game. And I think there's something to be said about, look, there's definitely a talent deficit, right? Like Kawhi Leonard has not played for them. Paul George obviously is not there anymore. But there is something to be said about just having a pecking order and knowing sort of the order of operations.
That's a fact. Yep.
Right? And you've got Harden as the head of the snake, and Chris Dunn knows what he's got to do. Guard the other ball handler, hit the open shots when they come to you, move, cut, whatever. Zubac, I'm the backbone of the defense. Derrick Jones Jr., I got the best wing. Amir Coffey, just do all the little things. And then, Norm Powell, who didn't play in this game, but he's like, all right, I'm the number 2 scorer in this game. Like, hit me on these catch and shoots. I'm ready to go. You drive and kick, and I'll make these shots. They just have a lot of guys who have been very high level role players in the NBA for a long time, who know how to play their roles. Nick Batum, Derrick Jones Jr., Zubac, like all these guys. And then they obviously have Ty Lue, who's one of the better coaches in the league, kind of assembling all the parts and putting it together and letting it go. So, I'm with you. Like, they're 11-7 right now. Are they going to be, a top 6 seed in the West? Probably not. But they're better than I think most people assumed they were going to be going into the season, considering what they lost. And that, again, Kawhi still has not played for them, which is crazy.
Right.
Let's go to Cleveland, where the Cavs beat the Raptors 122-108. They got their 17th win of the season. They remain undefeated at home. And the name we keep bringing up when we talked about Cleveland, Ty Jerome. Ty Jerome, man, 26 points, tying Donovan Mitchell for a team high. Ty Jerome is a push for 6th man of the year, Swipa. He's averaging 12.5 points per game on over 50% shooting. Last 4 games, 24 points, 10, 29, and then 26 tonight. There's a lot of good candidates for 6th man of the year. I'm not sitting here saying he's the favorite, but he's going to be on the short list of guys if he keeps playing like this.
Yeah, Ty Jerome, Malik Monk, Naz Reid. Dante's not been the same yet this year with Minnesota, just a different kind of fit.
Pritchard.
I mean, yeah. Who?
Peyton Pritchard, Boston.
Peyton Pritchard, yep.
You can get some run in there.
Shout out Russell Westbrook. Not in the conversation, but I think he's another one. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of players I think that have tremendous value off the bench. Again, this is just like I said, Cleveland has just caught the perfect wave of they hit on draft picks, they hit on free agent signings, they hit on the trade, they hit on the coach, they hit on the front office. Everybody believes, and they're just rolling, and they're 17-1. I believe they were the 9th team ever to start 17-1 to an NBA season. I think post merger. So this is they're doing everything they're supposed to do, and the game was like within like striking distance for the Raptors for a little bit.
It was.
But then eventually Cleveland, they just put that pedal down that they have, and they just go up 15 points out of nowhere.
It's what good teams can do, right? They're just like, all right, we're going through it. Last 4 minutes, boom, done. You're out of here. And that was it. We're going to finish up in Sacramento, where the Kings lost to the Brooklyn Nets 108-103. 34 points for Cam Thomas. The Nets shot 49% from beyond the arc to get this one on the road. De'Aaron Fox has 31 points in the loss. Here's my take on the Nets, Swipa. They're 7-10. They're in position to make a run at the play-in tournament in the East. My only question is, what are you doing? You're supposed to be tanking. You traded for all your draft picks back. What's going on? Like, start trading these players. Cam Thomas is legitimately good. They got to get rid of that guy as soon as possible because he's too good. He's keeping them in these games. And defensively, they got Cam Johnson, Nick Claxton, Dorian Finney-Smith. Like, they're good enough to kind of hang in and Ben Simmons, and they're good enough to hang in these games. There's a lot of size. Jody Fernandez is too good of a coach. Like, they're too good. They're too good, and they're losing their season by winning too many games. They got to trade these guys.
Well, do you think, though, there's something to be said about learning good habits and not just losing?
Sure.
I think they could be the 76ers. They tanked for years and didn't learn good habits, and it never worked, and it's not going to work for them. But there's ways like the Thunder, they tanked the right way, but they still won. And the next thing you know, SGA was like, oh, I know how to win. And then they get Chet, and then they get J-Dub, and then they get Casey Wallace. And all of a sudden, they're contending for the best team in the West. So I think that for them, the Nets, it's about how to realign our franchise with healthy foundational goals by setting good habits, learning how to win, but then also knowing when to take your foot off the gas as the season goes on. That way you can continue to accumulate more talent. But by the time the other kids are ready and everybody's in the fold, Cam Thomas and all the rest of them, they're now like in year 5, year 6.
Right.
We're ready to rock.
The only question with them is Cam Thomas part of the future? Or is he somebody that has more value to you in terms of putting up a bunch of points on the board now, and then we trade him to some team that can use him as a sixth man or something like that? How many of these guys, in other words, are going to be part of that build 4 or 5 years from now? I like a lot of these guys. I don't know what the answer to it. It feels like Finney-Smith is a guy that's going to have to get traded. So you've got that one. Other than that, I'm not really sure. So they might hold on to a lot of these guys, and you couldn't blame them if they wanted to do that.
Well, Cam Thomas this year is averaging 24, 3 and 3
awesome.
on, I would say about mid efficiency right now. So, I personally think he could be a great 6-man on somebody's roster, like Tyler Hero was back in the day. But again, who knows? He's still super young. He's 23. So who knows how much better he gets.
That wraps it up for Locked On NBA Game Night. Every game, every night in 30 minutes. Make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, Odyssey, and wherever you get your podcasts.